This is Anders Odden, and you're listening to the Thomas Eriksen podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Thomas Eriksen podcast. This is episode number 7. And I am Thomas Eriksen. To those who do not know who I am the creator of the Norwegian black metal band Mork. And I decided to do this podcasting now during the ongoing epidemic. All shows and tours are cancelled, obviously, and no one really knows for sure when things will come back. So just to keep myself occupied, I guess, and just to explore a new platform of creativity, I jumped onto the podcast game. If you want to contribute and support myself, my podcast, and my musical ventures, feel free to visit the official Mork band web shop over at the homepage. You will find the link in the description. I appreciate if you pick up a t-shirt or a vinyl or a CD or even a sticker or a patch. Doesn't really matter. The main point is to spread my plague around, which is my brand of Norwegian black metal. This week's episode is a special one for me, as I am going really international. My chat goes all the way over to California and Los Angeles. Over the past couple of years, I have gotten to know Dirk Verbeuren, who is currently the drummer in Megadeth, actually. When people close to me know that Megadeth is one of my all-time favorite bands. So the 16-year-old Thomas inside me kind of freaked out when I think it was in late January or early February, went to the Megadeth show in Oslo and actually found myself on the Megadeth guest list. And that was a big moment. So really much appreciate that. So thank you, Dirk. Dirk is also a big part of the new version of the Norwegian death metal band Cadaver, who also is friends of ours. And they are currently out with a brand new digital EP for everyone to check out, Spotify and whatnot. And this man he's a extremely talented drummer and also one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. So when you have those attributes to your personality and persona, you will obviously get a lot of work. So the list of bands Dirk has been involved with is impressive, to say the least. Just to mention a few, he stepped in for Satyricon. He's been in Testament, I think. He played with Aborted, and he did the Devon Townsend band or project. So a really talented guy, and just stick around and listen to our chat. It was long and it was good and interesting. So I won't be blabbering for much longer. I don't think there were any other news this week, actually. So let's jump into my chat with my good friend Dirk Verbeuren of Megadeth. just have to bear with me. I have to try to tape the telephone to a stand here.
Yeah, no, go ahead, man. I already pressed record on my mic, so but it's probably a good time to test it too. I'm gonna just press stop and see if it actually recorded.
Awesome.
Yes, it did. Okay.
Oh, you're such a good studio guy.
Oh, thank you. No, it's a great idea of you to be like, hey, if you record the voice, I didn't even think about that, but it's gonna work great this way.
It will sound way better afterwards.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we are back. It's a long distance call this time, and it's social distancing done right, I suppose, because it's across the Atlantic and whatnot, and. My call goes to Los Angeles today, and a fellow I just recently gotten to know the last year or so, I think, and really a beast of a drummer. I read his resume just recently, and I'm blown away about all the stuff he has been included in, and. If you say, some people say that Dave Grohl is the nicest man in rock, then I think Dirk Verbeuren would be the nicest guy in metal. So there you go.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure, man.
It's my pleasure to be here, man. Great to chat with you today. Like we were saying, like this is what we have going for ourselves nowadays, that everybody has to be, not on stage and not even in the studio or in the rehearsal room, because even that's not possible at the moment. So then we can just talk.
You can cough all you want.
Yeah.
So how is life over there now with the COVID stuff and everything? I think you are working a lot from home.
Yes, fortunately, I was talking actually with my wife about that the other day. We're fortunate that we are, first of all, able to stay home, that we don't have jobs, like some other people do that force us to go out. I mean, I have my cousin's wife over in Belgium is a nurse, and we have several friends also over on the East Coast who work in the medical profession, a few nurses and stuff. So it's they don't have the choice even to stay home. They have to go in the line of fire, which a lot of people have said it nowadays, but it's really true that anybody who's out there right now, working to keep people healthy as much as possible and to keep the economy going, they're heroes. So as much as people complain and say it sucks that we have to stay shuttered inside and we can't do what we usually do, we're also very fortunate to even be able to do that. I think that's important to remember. And yes, as you said, fortunately, I have a setup here that allows me to teach drums via, online, and which I've been doing for many years. But now, of course, it comes in even more handy. And then I also do session work here in my home studio. So it's perfect, But life here is, LA is a big city. There's, millions and millions of people. And so I only see my part of it right now because I only go for the very rare grocery run with the mask on. And, when I come home, change out of all the clothes, take a shower, wipe everything down. It's pretty brutal. It's like we take it really seriously. I actually just lost my uncle last week in Belgium. One of my uncles passed away from the virus.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So, I mean, he was an older, he was in his early 80s. Yeah. But it's really not a joke, and I think I see a lot of people out in the world who seem to just not want to deal with this and just want to go out and because they're maybe not touched by it directly in some way. But even though this uncle was not somebody that I had been in touch with for a long time, it's still like when a family member of yours passes away from this, you definitely realize how serious it is. So I think people should take it seriously.
I'm sorry to hear that. My condolences.
Thank you. Yeah.
Like you said, over here, actually, life seemed to go on as before this thing. Mm-hmm. People, there's actually pubs down in the city here which has opened, and right. People are sitting outside and drinking, and everyone was like on alert for the first couple of weeks, and then people seemed to just grow tired.
Yeah.
But as I've said before, I have a day job, and I haven't been sent home. We still have to go to work. So, yeah. But luckily, I do not know anybody who has been infected by this virus yet at all.
Good.
I know that Telok from Mayhem. I think he was out and traveling with the band, and he came home and actually catch the virus.
Wow.
But that's the closest thing, and of course the Testament guys and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But,
Will from Death Angel, the drummer from Death Angel, barely made it actually. So he was in a coma for almost 2 weeks, and they didn't think he was gonna survive. And in the end, he ended up making it. He was also on that tour, obviously, with Testament and those guys. And he was really hit very hard. They thought he wasn't gonna make it. So, and he's safe now, but it was really close for him.
And it seems it's a bit individual how you get hit by this thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, right? It's like, obviously, we know already that people who are more fragile in some way, like mostly people with, older people with reduced immunity seem to be more, affected by it in general. But at the same time, there's so much we don't know. And my father was a pharmaceutical researcher, so I've always been in a household where science was, kind of like central to a lot of stuff.
Very good.
And so I've talked with him a lot. He actually, him and his team developed like 2 medicines, I think, in his lifetime that went on the market. Nothing to do with virus or anything like that, but just I know a little bit about the whole process and how long it takes in this world, in the world of pharmaceuticals and stuff to go from a concept or an idea to actually having something out there. It usually takes between 10 and 15 years for something from the start of a development to something to be deemed safe for people and out on the market. So when something like this happens, that affects obviously the whole world, and we're social animals, and we want to be around each other, and we want to do what we're used to do. It doesn't add up. It's like what we want and the reality, it's 2 different things. And yeah, you're going to see this a lot, I think, like what you said, where people will go out and get sick of this. And, I have friends like messaging me like, hey, want to hang out? And I'm like, no, yes, I do want to, but I'm not going to, because right now, like, I have to stay safe for me and for people around me, and this could last for a long time, unfortunately.
I sincerely hope that you are wrong, that it will be over pretty soon, man.
Yeah, no, I know. Me too. But the reality is we don't know. So yeah, maybe it will die down and things will be fine in 6 months. I don't know. But at the same time, if we're waiting for some kind of, treatment or vaccine or even medicine that can help, those things are not going to happen in a short amount of time. I know that because, the fastest any vaccine has ever been developed from scratch was 4 years. So when people are talking about, like by the end of the year, things will be fine. Yeah, maybe, but I wouldn't put all my money on that, because we honestly don't know. And if people keep dying, and people keep getting sick, we don't know. Or maybe people will start developing antibodies and this thing will just go away and then things will be jolly again. But you don't know. So right now you just have to live in the moment and do what's safe right now, which is stay inside,
It sucks so much because in the upcoming January I was supposed to go to California again, actually, because of the NAMM thing.
Right.
Because I have a custom guitar and stuff, and the guy had a booth over there,
Right.
So I think that is just to forget about. So
yeah, especially here in California, they're pretty strict, and they're basically, they've already said that they don't think there will be any shows not only this year but probably next year, maybe by the end of next year, So as far as bigger shows, I'm not talking necessarily about like small gatherings might be okay, depending on how things evolve, but right now they're preparing for this to last well into next year, so.
Yeah, but who is interested in having a concert for a small gathering? There's no business in that at all.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's just funny, but that's it.
yeah, exactly.
But let's try to get our minds away from this pandemic and bad times we are living in. And let's talk some music.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. All right. So I just want, this is kind of, is this your first podcast, by the way?
Maybe my second or third or something. I haven't done that many. I did one for Meinl last year, and then I might have done one more before that. I can't quite remember.
Because I've been searching the platforms and I haven't found anything about you or with you. So I was hoping this was the debut, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely the first full-on metal one, because it can't be much more metal than with you, sir.
Thank you very much. All right. So basically, it will be a portrait on you, obviously. So let's just go back to where you come from and where it started for you.
Well, okay. So I'm from Belgium, and as long as I can remember, actually, one of my first memories in relation to music is that I really loved this song Lola by this band called The Kinks, and which at the time I didn't know was about a transgender person, which later on when I grew up and I learned that was pretty funny. But so I just really loved this song, and this DJ in Belgium who was quite big at the time. So I'm talking now, this is like very early 80s, because I was born in 75, so I was probably like 6 or 7 years old, whatever. And this DJ took requests, so my parents called into the show and had me ask him for the song, and then they like recorded it on cassette and stuff. So there's a recording of it somewhere of me asking for this song, and the DJ being all like, of course, excited that this little kid wants to hear the Kinks, And so that's like kind of like one of my early memories with music. But there was always music in my house. Like both my parents came from religious families, so there was always like church music, but then they also besides classical music, were both into like rock music. My dad played guitar. They both played some piano. They both sang. Like back then, in those days when my parents were young, getting together and around a guitar and with friends and singing songs was a very common thing, right? So that was always around, and so there was always radio as well. And I remember from very young, I was just super into that. My dad had some vinyls that he would show me. Some stuff was, of course, like kids stuff, but then other stuff was just records he thought, I might enjoy. And so I was always around music. And then at age 7, the story goes that in my school I was going to at the time, they were offering music lessons. And according to my parents, I wanted to play violin. I didn't remember that. I thought they just said, oh, you should pick something. How about violin? But according to them, I really wanted that. And so I don't really remember that, but... So anyways, I started playing violin at age 7. So that was my first foray into like the musical world,
So strings.
Yeah, I know. Strange, right? I kept it up for quite a few years, but I was never really, at that age, especially the classical music thing only had so much effect on me. I was obviously more into, pop music and whatever was on the radio. That was much cooler, of course, than this old stuff, right? So, and then playing violin is hard. It's like a difficult instrument. So I don't think I was practicing quite enough. And so eventually it kind of fell to the wayside. But by then I was hooked on music, and I was taping a lot of stuff from the radio, always like, how people used to do, like listen to the top 30 and try to like get a decent recording of the songs you like. And then the DJ talks over the end of it and you're like, I have to record it again next week, stuff like that. And then I started getting creative. I remember this too. I don't think I've ever told this story, but I started getting creative like around the time when like techno and stuff was happening, and I was into some of that stuff and like mixes and mega mixes and whatnot, whatever they called it back then. And so I started like making my own mega mixes where I would blend together, like we had a double tape deck at one point. So I would blend together like bits and pieces of songs and spoken things and try to make like these very raw compositions just out of bits and pieces of things, like a very primitive way of making music, I guess.
So you're DJing at that early age.
Yeah, in a way, yeah, I guess, I should look and see if I can ever find those recordings somewhere. It's probably really funny, but yeah. So I was always, there was always something in me that wanted to come out clearly, because that was at an age where I had no concept of obviously a musical career or anything like that, but it was in me somehow.
Some creativity blooming in there.
Yeah. And I owe it to my parents, because they always encouraged this kind of stuff. I'm sure I broke a couple of my dad's tape decks, like pressing the buttons a million times, and which I'm sure like he wasn't too stoked about. But at the same time, they always kept encouraging me, and they did throughout their whole lives. They've always supported what I did and, allowed me to be where I am today. Without them, I definitely, I'm not one of those people that you hear sometimes where, their parents are like, what's all that noise you're doing? You know, like my parents.
It's not a rebellion in a way then.
Well, I mean, it was, you know, because I in my teens, I was rebellious like everybody and kind of antisocial and all that stuff. But they were always like, my dad would, you know, travel to the States when I was still living in Europe, and I would make lists for him of albums to bring, and he would bring me back like Cannibal Corpse and stuff. No problem with those covers, you know, no issue whatsoever. He was never had any problem with that, and he was always support NWA, like Straight Outta Compton, which is like, you know, some serious lyrics on there to bring home to your 15-year-old, whatever. But it was totally cool. Like they trusted that I wouldn't go crazy, you know, and I didn't, and so they always encouraged it.
Cannibal Corpse I would say that's the most extreme you could go. So
yeah,
cool.
like Butchered at Birth and stuff. That's some brutal covers, you know.
I absolutely love that band. I'm a huge fan.
Oh yeah, me too.
And as everyone else, I got into them via Ace Ventura, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think I got into them seeing the Eaten Back to Life vinyl in the store, because that was a time when, you know, in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I would just go to record stores, because there was, I mean, we had at that time I lived in France, because when I was, you know, early teens, my dad started working in Paris, so my family moved to France.
Yeah.
And so I would go to record stores there, and you know, at that time I started really getting into metal. And a lot of the stuff you didn't know, except if you just saw it, because not many magazines were talking about the extreme stuff. So it was really just like, go to the store, flip through, it was there, see what the sticker says on the album, like Napalm Death, world fastest band. Oh, I got to get this, you know. Or then Cannibal Corpse, like like the sleeves would be open a lot of times, so you would read the lyrics and be like, what is this thing, you know?
If it had that little tag on it, explicit lyrics, that's a positive thing.
Exactly, yeah. That was like a buy me sticker, you know.
And I remember I talked with you know, Sven Atle Silenos the other day, and he also told me that he picked up his first metal albums because of the album covers and stuff like that. And I guess everyone does that. Even I did that, you know. And it just attracts you somehow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you know, nowadays sometimes we even wonder why there's even an album cover, because if it's just online, it might as well not have one, right? But the truth is back in those days, before online stuff existed, that was a very big part of the identity of the whole thing, and it was very exciting, actually. I remember, like, besides going to shows, which I went to a lot of underground shows in Paris too when I was a teenager, but you know, we lived outside of the city, so I had to do quite a long train ride by myself, or sometimes with friends, to go do this stuff. And going to like Virgin Megastore on the Champs-Élysées in Paris was like one of the most exciting things you could do. And then there were also some underground stores as well, like smaller stores, you know, that had a lot of strange things and rare things. And so I was like, that was like my stuff. I mean, I didn't have a lot of money, so I had to really pick and choose what I bought, but you were still taking a lot of risks, you know, just buying stuff based on the cover or the name or the song title, whatever attracted you. So those things were paramount to like what you were going to discover, you know, besides tape trading, of course, you know, which I also started tape trading a lot with friends in school, and then eventually with people in other countries and stuff. So.
But did you get into the metal like from 1990 and forward, or already in the 80s? When did you get into hard rock and heavy metal?
Yeah, late 80s. I actually, when I still lived in Belgium, so probably like, I can't remember the years, but like I know my very first album that I was really into that was sort of metal, I guess hard rock, was The Final Countdown by Europe, you know, so that was 84, I think.
Scandinavian metal.
Yeah, exactly. That was the first one, and then like early Bon Jovi stuff, well, early, like famous Bon Jovi stuff, like New Jersey and Slippery When Wet, just the stuff that was on the radio, you know, that was like, because at the time I got everything from the radio. I didn't have any other way to get music. But then late 80s, when I moved to France, I think we moved to France in maybe 88. And then I went to international school there outside of Paris. And that's when, you know, I got into extreme metal, because then people were trading stuff. And I had a really good friend from Holland. His name was Lutz, and I'm still in touch with him. And I still meet up with him whenever we play in Holland. And he was very connected. He always got tapes from a lot of people, anything from, you know, Metallica to Megadeth to Slayer to like DRI to Suicidal Tendencies. And then eventually the more extreme stuff, like all the earache stuff, Napalm Death, you know, Extreme Noise Terror. And so he would just constantly be like, hey, give me tapes, like bring me some tapes. I got a bunch of new stuff to copy for you. And so it was just, 88, 89 was just like explosion in my face of the most amazing music ever. And it was so underground, and sometimes like the information that people wrote on the tapes was totally wrong. So, like you just had what you had, sometimes there was no song titles, or sometimes there were, the album titles were like from copying them and then someone else copied them, they became wrong. And I later found out like, oh, that's what that was really called. Okay.
And not just that. Then you also have the little coincidence that happened by wonderful mistake, is that when you copy a tape for like, the 5th time or 10th time, you actually get the necro sound, which
exactly.
Which also brings a flavor,
Absolutely.
Mork, when Mork played the first show ever, actually, that was in Poland, in the city Olsztyn. And I remember I saw Peter from Vader.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I saw him in the bar, and I just went over to him just to say hello and have a little chat, and I told him a story that I have heard Fenris talk about, that I think Fenris got a tape copy of some early Vader demos thing, which was, as I said, copied for the 10th time, and it sounded so necro. So that kind of inspired the necro sound in, Norwegian black metal in a way. And I remember just telling that story to Peter, and he was like, oh, he didn't quite know that, but that was cool,
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think it's funny because, kind of like how I was doing those mixes when I was really young, and all I had was this double tape deck, but the way the buttons worked, you could like be quite precise with where you cut and paste things. And then I remember you could also, if you kind of press the play button halfway, the tape would kind of start rolling, but not at the right speed. So you could manipulate sound. And in the same way, like you said, 10th generation tape copies and even vinyl too, which had and still has its own like warm sound and stuff. It really kind of is a big part of what makes this underground music so attractive. And to me, it did then too, if you look at things like, obviously a lot of the early extreme stuff that was recorded goes into this category, because producers had no idea what this kind of music was, let alone how to record it. But so people now, now that everybody knows and everybody uses the same set of things to do this kind of music, it kind of sucks the life out of a lot of it for me, because the character comes from the flaws. Just like with musicians, I say this all the time to my drum students, like, sure, it's nice to be able to play perfect and to be able to execute things very well. But at the same time, if you look at, the imperfections, those are what make this guy not sound like that guy, not sound like that guy. It makes your personality. And that's, by the way, one of the reasons why with Cadaver, we recorded everything old school, analog, not on tape, because we didn't have that setup, but we recorded it in a way where me and Anders played together without click track on almost all of the songs, the exception of a couple of songs. And we just jammed through the whole song, to get to the end result. And you can hear that in the end result. And it's not perfect. If I played every part separately and to a click, it would have been more perfect, but it would have been less what we were looking for. So I think, that's an important discussion nowadays in music. And it's really good to see that, of course, this because you make your music in a similar way, I'm sure. But a lot of bands nowadays are kind of going back to how death metal and black metal and grindcore is supposed to be, which is a lot more raw and organic and kind of with whatever flaw comes naturally.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm sort of a one take guy, because I usually, Mork is my one man thing, so I create it in solitude, So if I'm sort of coming up with the song on the go while I'm recording, so if the riff sounds basically okay, then it's a keeper, and then
exactly.
it keeps it spontaneous for me, and
yes,
vibe.
that's wonderful, and that's the key word, is spontaneous, because that's something that, I went through that experience with my first real band was called Scarve, and we were, we were together for about 15 years or so. We did 4 albums, a bunch of demos and stuff, and we toured, and And there was a phase in Scarv when we were all really growing as musicians and writing a lot and working together, like rehearsing 4 or 5 times a week. You know, especially me and the 2 guitar players who were like kind of the core of the band. We rehearsed together a lot. And it came to a point where when we recorded our second album, we spent so much time rehearsing the songs that by the time we were laying them down, I was hardly feeling the songs anymore. It was like a technical execution, you know, and that album came out cool though. It came out good. Like, I'm not unhappy about it, but I remember really feeling at that time that like, this is over rehearsed. Like, we spent too much time on this, you know, and it was a really high technical level. So in some ways we had to practice it a lot, but I've since, you know, progressively gone more and more towards exactly what you said, which is spontaneity, which like what you do in Mork, I do that with my grindcore band Ben C, which is like, I write everything on drums first. I basically just sit down and improvise some stuff. You know, sometimes I'll do a few takes of an idea that I have, but a lot of times it's just a raw, like whatever I come up with. And then later on, I sit down, I take those drums, I put guitarists over them in also a very spontaneous way. Like my first recording is usually the final recording, you know, and I just play it until I can play the guitar right, because I'm a very terrible guitar player. So I can't do a full first take, unfortunately. I'm not that good, but the ideas are very fresh and spontaneous. I don't overthink them for like 6 months and then go into some professional studio and re-record everything again, because it loses the flavor. It loses the energy that you can only get when it's coming out of you at that moment.
But is that a one-man band that you have?
Well, it's not really a one-man band, but I do write all the music and lyrics, and then currently I have my good friend Sven from Aborted, the singer. He does all the vocals because I don't have a death metal voice or anything like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's one of my favorite voices in the genre, and we've been friends for many years. So he records all the vocals for me, and then I have Shane from Napalm Death does the bass part. So I usually just send him a scratch bass and then just tell him just whatever you want to do, you know. And then my friend Sylvain from Scarv and Soilwork usually puts down the leads, because I'm also not good enough to play lead guitar. But
that's awesome. That's like a all-star dream band, I guess.
yeah. In a way, you know, I don't know. It's not really meant to be like I really do it for passion. You know, it's not about anything else than I just want to express myself and have fun.
You should send me some of that stuff. I don't think I've heard it.
Yeah, I will, man. I will. Like, currently, I have all the stuff I have out is kind of old already, because I've been working on a lot of new music for many years, none of which has been completed and released yet, because, you know, obviously Sven and Shane have very busy schedules, and both were supposed to record this past month, and then the virus happened. So Shane and was supposed to be here because they were going to tour the States, and he was supposed to come to my house for a few days before the tour and track all the bass. Obviously, that got canceled, and then Sven was supposed to go in the studio a few weeks ago, and that also got canceled because everything's closed in Belgium as well. So, so here we are.
That's how it goes.
Yes.
No, I have not had the pleasure of meeting Shane in person yet, but he also plays in my other friend's band, the Silenos's band. You know, his death metal thing, Insidious Disease.
Yes, exactly. Yes, who just released a new album.
Yep. That's true. Or a single, I think it is, actually.
Oh, it's just a single for now.
Yeah, the album is coming. Yeah.
So, my good friend and drum tech, Tony Laureano, who was my drum tech in Megadeth for many years, is their drummer.
That's the drummer.
Yes.
Yeah, the connections.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, no, they're great. And I'm a huge fan of Mark Grew as well. Like, he's... You know, I think him and John Tardy and Martin Van Drunen are probably like my favorite death metal vocalists. So
Morgoth, isn't that his home band or his first thing? Yeah, I know. I know that Shane, he doesn't even have that much time to play in that band because he's all Napalm Death is all over the place, which is a good thing.
I think the only band that he can really fully dedicate himself to with live and stuff is Napalm, because that's obviously, you know, the oldest band and the most legendary band. But Shane has about probably 100 bands that he's in. Like, me and him alone have like, I think 4 different projects.
Yeah, if I were in Shane's shoes and had a band that's mentioned in the Guinness World Record book, I guess I would just carry on too.
Exactly. No, but Shane is an absolute sweetheart. He is a wonderful human being, super nice person, very, very down to earth, no ego whatsoever. and just loves music, just loves making music with people, all kinds of different music. He just released it's like a ambient record under the name Dark Sky Burial, because he loves, that kind of music. Like he grew up with a lot of stuff like Coil and My Bloody Valentine and things that are outside of metal, Swans, and so he loves all kinds of stuff. And so currently that's what he's working on since he's at home, and he has 2 young kids, so he has to spend a lot of family time, but every now and then he can get to his keyboards and make some weird noises.
It's refreshing to hear that people are open for other genres than just metal, And I heard you and Anders on the live thing you did on Instagram and talking about having other inputs than metal, and I think that creates the best music. So that's the way to go. But,
yeah, for sure.
But let's talk about what's your first band and onward. When did you actually form a band?
Well, so after I was talking about Paris, and I lived there, went to high school, started playing drums at some point and just jamming with friends, but nothing really serious. I tried to get some bands off the ground, but it never really happened. It was just me and a guitarist, and then me and another guitarist, and we were just playing along to stuff and coming up with some ideas, but it never really materialized. Like, I think we were too young and too occupied with other stuff to really be serious about it. And then I after I finished high school, so this was in 1993, my parents said, well, what do you want to do? And I had kind of thought, well, since my dad's a scientist, I will probably just become a scientist, because I did a lot of science in school. But then I was like, but I really don't want to do that. I just love music so much, So I told my parents, well, I just really want to do music, if there's a way. So they found this school in Nancy, which is northeast of France, kind of eastwards of Paris towards the German border. Mm. And there's a school there called, now it's called Music Academy International. Back then it was called a different name, but it's kind of like the Berklee Institute here in the States. So it's basically a modern music school. You go there, all you do all day is music, whatever instrument you do, and then you take lessons with all these different teachers and different styles, and you also get to play with other musicians, because part of the lessons are jam sessions or, learning songs and then performing them together, etc., etc. So really cool. So they sent me there, and it completely changed my life, because all of a sudden here I am, not only living on my own all of a sudden and taking care of my own stuff, but also in this environment that was just very fertile for creativity, getting in touch with a lot of kinds of music that I wasn't familiar with, mostly like jazz fusion stuff, electronic stuff, ambient stuff that some of the people were listening to that I didn't really know. And we were all still trading tapes or just going to each other's apartments and listening to stuff and just being blown away. We also had a lot of really cool master classes there. People would, every week, some artists would come and play, and it was people like John Scofield, Dennis Chambers. I remember Anthony Jackson, like these big names in the music world, like in the musicians world, that just completely blew you away, and a lot of inspiration. And that's when I formed my first band. Like early on in that school, one of our teachers told us, you should all play in a band. So I was like, okay. So one day I was at a bar, like having a coffee or something, and this guy walks in and he had like a Corner patch on his vest and some other bands that I liked. So I just went up to him like, hey, I like Corner too. Want to do a band? And that was Patrick Martin, who ended up being, the guitar player in Scarf. So he's like, yeah, sure, I have some riffs. So I went over to his apartment, and I remember he was playing his riffs like dry on his acoustic guitar, and I was playing drums with on his bed or something with my drumsticks, and that's how it started, And
how old were you, like 16, 17, or?
No, that was after high school, so I was 19 by that time. So
19?
Yeah, 19, yeah. And
so that's the first venture.
The first serious venture, yeah, because then it became really my passion. This band became my passion. We started in late 93. We recorded our first demo in early 94, and, we barely existed as a band. We barely just got a singer and a bassist in, and all of a sudden we got this opportunity to go record at a audio engineering school, because these guys that were students there had a project. They had to record a band as a project. So they're like, we'll record you for free. So
Lucky
we had
break.
like Yeah, we had like 4 songs, you know, that's all we had. And we existed as a band for like 4 months or whatever. And all of a sudden, here we are in the studio with no experience whatsoever. You know, no idea what we were doing. Very limited time. I think we recorded the whole thing in like, you know, a day or a day and a half or something. And that ended up being our first demo. And then we started sending that out, you know, made cassettes. Started the whole thing, sending flyers, getting mail from all over the planet, because this was still before the internet. So,
but you're saying this was like 93, 94?
Yeah.
This was death metal, or where were you in the landscape?
Well, we always had this idea to be different, right? That was kind of like, it naturally kind of sounded different, and we were like, let's just follow that. So we got this singer in the band, our first singer, who was only on our demo and our first mini CD, and then we had different singers, but he both did like growling vocals and melodic vocals as well.
Okay.
And that was at the time, you know, this was like just around the time when Fear Factory had come out. You know, they'd come out a few years prior with their first album, and then they did Demanufacture in 94. And the whole use of melodic vocals on this extreme music was unheard of. Like, it was very new. I think they were one of the first bands that really showed that you could do stuff with that. And of course, not everybody was into it. I loved it. And so they were a big influence in the early days when we started Scarf, along with, you know, bands like Corner and Loud Blast, which was a French band that we were really into. And
so it's more industrial and gothic then, perhaps.
Yeah, you know, it's really hard to describe the end result of that demo. It's not something that I really can relate to that much anymore. Of course, it has nostalgic value to me, but you can clearly tell that we didn't really know that well what we were doing, you know. But yeah, it was we called it like ambient death metal or something, which makes no sense, but you know, and it also doesn't sound like ambient death metal now looking back, but that's what it was called, or something like that. I don't remember.
It's growling and it's clean vocals. It's ambient death metal. There you go. I
guess so. Yeah.
But this went on for a few years, right?
Yeah. So, you know, we ended up getting a pretty solid lineup together. At the same time, I have to say, so I finished this school. I quickly became a teacher there because they didn't really have anybody who was specialized in metal music. And I was only 20 by the time I finished this school, so I certainly wasn't specialized in anything, but I still had the guts to go up to the school's director and say, like, I want to do metal lessons. So he's like, okay. And so I started. I'm sure my first classes were a total disaster, because here I am all of a sudden, this 20-year-old, like, teaching, you know, a class full of drummers, half of which are like way older than me and more experienced, and just I'm like super afraid and shy, and, you know, I'm sure it sucked like crazy, but anyway, they kept me, and so I kept occasionally, you know, every week I did some lessons there. And then I also started like playing with some different bands. You know, I played with a band in Paris and did my first like local tours with them and stuff. And in the meantime, my own band Scarf is kind of like getting better, getting stronger, getting a better lineup together, getting our music refined. And eventually we started releasing albums. So our first album came out in 2000, and we did 3 more albums after that in the early 2000s, you know, and started kind of doing some tours, some festivals. So it really started to become bigger, but at the same time, not quite big enough that it was viable at all. Like, I don't think we ever made any money with Scarf, because we produced all of our actual albums in Sweden. We worked with Daniel Bergstrand. So we would always come to Sweden. You know, the first one he just mixed, and the second one we flew him to France to record us. The third one we did everything in Uppsala. So we spent a lot of money to really make quality albums, you know, and so as a result, because we didn't make much money from gigs, you know, we never made any money. So the biggest thing was just that, you know, it still was a passion in a way, even though we were extremely professional about the way we were going about it. And I was always pushing everybody to be as pro as possible. I also started realizing by the time I was approaching age 30 that, yeah, it's really hard to make money when you're a French death metal band, you know, that plays complex music. And that's hard music to transcribe live, because on a record it's one thing, but you know, doing a live show where people can understand what you're playing when you have these very complex songs, then you need a really good sound guy and really good conditions, which you often don't have when you're an underground band. So it was tough for us, you know, to get our point across And we got lucky, like Meshuggah took us on tour because we had Frederick Thorndahl play on one of our songs, and he became a fan of the band. And so he asked us, like, do you want to open for us? So it was just Meshuggah and Scarf doing a European tour, and that was probably like one of the highlights of what we achieved, and their crowd was receptive because, well, they listened to Meshuggah, which is some of the most complex music out there. So we got some fans there, but it was hard. It was tough.
But were there kind of gentish back then too?
There were some influences, we liked working with polyrhythms in our, like starting in our albums, the demos maybe not so much, but in the albums we started having some polyrhythmic stuff happening, but it never sounded like gent because we didn't play like 7-string guitars. We didn't focus on chugging riffs. It was more the rhythmical influence that I think Meshuggah had on the entire metal scene in some way. You can hear that in bands like Nevermore and, bands that are totally not gent took some of the rhythmical ideas that bands like Meshuggah brought forth and were like, oh, that's cool, we can work with this in some way.
Yeah, this brings me to after this band, or I guess during this band, somehow you became a well-known name within the metal genre. And I told you earlier, I read your resume, and there's like this, it's a sea of bands and projects that you have contributed to. How did this start? How did you become that guy?
Well, it's a great question that I don't really know the answer to be honest. I ask myself this question too, because again, we're talking like early 2000s, so the internet was still a quite primitive thing, at least where I was in France. Of course we had email and surfing online started to get more, something you could actually do. After the modem era kind of ended and you started having like Wi-Fi decent connection, it got decent, but it wasn't what it is now. It wasn't like YouTube and just videos of everybody everywhere. It wasn't still like that. So when I started doing session work, I think a lot of it was word of mouth, where I did a recording here, and then maybe a year later I did a recording there, and then the French scene was not that big. Sure, there were a lot of bands, but at the same time, there were also not a lot of bands. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people knew each other. And France is a pretty big country, but as when you compare the population to the amount of metal that was happening, it was a pretty small, metal scene. So I think people just started knowing that, hey, there's this guy who can, record drums. So via friends, I got requests like, hey, I know this band and they're looking for a drummer to record their EP. Do you want to do it? Yeah, sure. And then stuff like that, and then eventually it came to like where Aborted, Sven, who is now also the singer in Ben C, they reached out to me through Listenable Records, who was also Scar's label, and they said, hey, we need a drummer to record this album, because our drummer is like having trouble with it, and we want to be faster and more heavy and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. So that ended up being Gormageddon, which was my first, I guess you could say, like album that in the long run ended up being like, a respected record from another band, So at the time we had no clue. Like it was pretty funny how that whole recording happened, because it was we scrambled everything together, and some songs were literally finished like on the spot, and it was a whole crazy situation. But I recorded all those drums for that album in like a day and a half, and it ended up really having that back to that spontaneous energy we talked about. That's so important. I think that's why people like that album so much, because it was really like a lot of pent-up energy that just came out, because we went to Denmark to record it, and the studio was being renovated and it wasn't ready when we got there. Some stuff was delayed. So we sat there for like the whole band, which I barely knew those guys at the time. So we all got to know each other and hang out for like 3 or 4 days until Jacob Hansen finally said, okay, sorry guys, everything's ready, go. By that time, I was so excited to record these songs that I just blasted through the whole album in the fastest I've ever done, And half the drum parts weren't even written, so they just would put on a song and I would just play blast beats all over, and they'd just be like, fuck yeah, this is killer, So that's kind of how the whole thing came together. It was a complete accident in a way, and really funny and just fun vibes. And that album over time ended up being like a classic album, I guess, for the band, which we had no idea whatsoever, So that's when, and then when you start to be a part of things like that, of course the word starts traveling abroad, and that leads me eventually to Soilwork. So,
yeah, the thing is that the Aborted, and I guess that's technical death metal, right? isn't
Yeah,
it?
I guess you could say that. Yeah.
Yeah, and if a drummer can pull that off, he can pull everything off. So that's like a perfect album to have on your resume, I would guess.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like I said, it was very funny because I didn't know the band before they contacted me, and I just kind of did what I do, And at the time, I was playing drums like, man, I was playing with different bands. I was sometimes rehearsing 3 times a day, like with 3 different bands, and then I was practicing drums too. So I was like, that's all I was doing. I was eating, sleeping, and breathing drums. So I was like really making progress and learning to play fast and learning to do all this stuff, even though compared to now, my technique back then was horrible, but somehow I made it work. I was just really determined to do what I do and to get good at it. So yeah, it came at a good time, I think. And again, since at the time we didn't know that, but I think those things have a ripple effect over time. When people start seeing like which guy played on this record, oh, that guy, then that's how, to answer your question, the name starts, signifying something to other people. And it's very strange because I didn't think about that first of all. I didn't think about that at all ever back then, and secondly, I didn't advertise myself either because I was just focused on, I wanted Scarf to be successful, right? That was my one and only goal in life. So I did that stuff and it was cool and stuff, but it wasn't for money. It wasn't because I wanted to be a session drummer. It was just because, I can do it and these guys are cool, so why not, right? And then...
I guess the secret here is that you are capable and you are talented and you are a nice guy and you never say no. That's the thing, I guess.
Yeah,
that's
maybe you're
thing.
right. Maybe you're right. It's funny because that's actually one of David Ellison's credos from Megadeth. He's told me that many times. He's like, always say yes. When somebody offers you to do something cool, say yes.
Yeah, I read his books and I totally agree. And I actually learned a little bit from that because I have said a bunch of no's the past years,
Right. Right.
So if you say no, the phone will stop ringing, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, especially nowadays, this is a time when it's more important than ever to be creative and to work on projects. I think now that we're all stuck in our homes.
Absolutely, and I said this earlier too that it's a bit wrong to put it like this. I know, but it's sort of a gift that we get all this time to be creative, if you know what I mean, if you can switch it around to something positive.
Yeah, you have to. I agree with you. I see that it can be perceived kind of as a twisted thing, but at the same time, it's like, what are we going to do? We can't sit here and just mourn or wallow in sadness because people are struggling, Of course, you have to be aware of that and act accordingly, which is why, again, I think it's important to do the right thing as much as you can and not be selfish.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yes, we do have to see this as a time where we get to do what we do. That's amazing.
Yes. And I'm finishing my, 5th Mork album now, and I started this podcasting thing, which I just barely coming through,
Nice. No, see, that's the thing. It's great. See, you get new music ready, you get creative in different ways. It's fantastic. We all will come out of this having grown as human beings.
Oh, yes, I believe so. Absolutely. And you actually segued into a big point for me, which is obviously Megadeth, which is, I told you when I got to know you as well, that has been one of my favorite bands from, I don't know, since I was like 16 or something.
Yeah.
And their catalog has meant a lot to me. I remember I saw Megadeth for the first time in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
When they opened for AC/DC, which is my other favorite band.
Nice. Nice.
So that was a nice thing to get to know that band back then.
For sure.
On that tour. And please just tell me something about Megadeth. How did you get into that? Did you tech for Lorena, or how was it?
No, so what happened was, I spent many years playing with Soilwork. I kind of, when I was still, I have to go back a little bit to the last years of Scarf, and we started touring a lot, and eventually I got a call from Soilwork to fill in for them on a tour, which turned into a full-time gig, which was my first big transition in music life, which was difficult for me because I was very dedicated to Scarf, but I also, as I was saying, Scarf, it was hard financially. I was 30, bills were coming. Like I was starting to see like I have to make some choices, and Soilwork was the obvious choice, unfortunately at the time, and fortunately in the long run. At the time it was a difficult pill for me to swallow in some ways, but I loved the guys. I could finally make some money doing music, and we were touring all the time and recording music, so it was great. So fast forward 12 years, the same thing happens again. I'm on the road with Soilwork, and all of a sudden, the first thing that happened was I got a text message from Chris Adler asking me what I was doing the following month or something, and I'm like, well, I have shows going on, So he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, why? What's this about? Tell me some more. And he's like, well, I can't really tell you much, but you might get a call at some point. So the next thing, a few days later, I get a call from 5B management saying like, hey, Dave Mustaine wants to talk to you. And of course, I had already figured this because I knew at the time Chris was playing in both Lamb of God, his original band, and Megadeth. So I figured it's going to be one or the other, I had toured with Soilwork, had opened for Lamb of God back in 2007 or 2008. So I had met him and we talked and stuff. And anyway, he had always been supportive, but at that time, I had no idea what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, like, yeah, I'll talk to Dave Mustaine, sure, So he calls me and it's basically like, yeah, look, we need a drummer for the first month of this next tour. Can you do it? He asked me a few questions. Next thing I know, I come home from this Soilwork tour and I'm studying the Megadeth set. And next thing I know, I'm playing with them. And all of a sudden, there I am.
That's insane.
Yeah. So it's again, it all connects what we're talking about, because it's again this thing where, a lot of people have asked me this question, obviously, how did you join Megadeth? And of course, it's true that Chris referred me, but there were also a lot of other people in the band, because you will imagine that somebody like Dave Mustaine, who has got a lot of experience, is not just asking one person like, hey, who should I pick on drums? He's asking everybody around him. I've seen him do this many times when we have to find, for example, a new crew member or something like that. He asks everybody, hey, what do you guys think of this person? Or do you know anybody? He'll ask his management. He'll ask us, the band members. He'll ask the rest of the crew, anybody else whose opinion he can trust, So a lot of people had put me on their list of drummers, and then I guess, it just kind of converged to that. They looked at some of my videos and thought that I might, for a multitude of reasons, maybe fit the band. And so there I am, So all my work over the years to do what I do led me there. And it's one of those things that you just can't ever imagine. I mean, I'm like you. To like I grew up, I saw Megadeth in 1990 on the Clash of the Titans tour with Slayer, Testament, and Suicidal. That was one of my first big shows that I saw. It had a huge impact on me. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the early Megadeth stuff, and so for me to even imagine even talking to Dave Mustaine on the phone seemed surreal, like just that, let alone like playing with a band, right? So it was just a completely surreal situation, and I just went into it, and of course there's some how shall I say, some stress that comes with that, because you're like, okay, this is the time where I have to really do well,
Provide, yes.
I worked really hard, and I'm fortunate because over the years I've had to do that a lot. Like actually having 10 days to learn the Megadeth set, like a lot of people are like, oh, only 10 days. And I'm like, no, 10 days is a lot. When I played with Satyricon back in 2014, I had 2 days to learn like, I think it was like 16 Satyricon songs, including some really long and complex ones, So that was like brutal. That was one of the most intense things I've done. And I really wanted to do that well because I'm a huge Satyricon fan. I respect the guys a lot. And any job I go in, I give 1,000%. So in comparison, the Megadeth gig, I had a decent amount of time to assimilate the songs, to study them, and so yeah. By the time we played the first show, of course I was a bit stressed out during that one, but it also felt good. It felt nice to be like on the stage with those guys, and extremely surreal. I mean, to this day, sometimes I'm on stage. It's now 4 years ago, that I started playing with them. And to this day, sometimes I'm on stage and I'm like, I can't believe I'm here.
It's a pinch me moment, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you, how is things with Megadeth during the quarantine and COVID period? How is it now?
Well, work continues on the new material. Actually, we just got some messages that some song structures have been updated. So because we have like a common workspace that we work on online, but basically we did a lot of work last year that we had to stop because Dave had to go into his cancer treatment. So, but we got a lot of work done. We got a lot of songs written last year in various stages of completion. And then our plan was for me to go and track drums now about a month ago, which obviously we couldn't do because I couldn't fly to Tennessee where Dave lives and go to the studio there. So right now we're just kind of like, playing it by ear. That's the best thing I can say. Like Dave has continued work on the song structures because he's now working on lyrics and kind of how to place them. And so it's modifying some of the structures, maybe making some parts longer and stuff as you do. And you realize that like, oh, I need more space to put these words in or whatever. But so that's the kind of stuff we're working on. And I am just on standby. As soon as it's possible for me to go record, I will go record. That's pretty much where we're at,
So when you're ready for it, when the COVID is over and done with, you are just finished and ready for the studio, and you just go bang bang, and it will be a new record, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it being that COVID's gonna be over, because I just don't see it being over soon, unless if a really positive scenario happens. That's kind of unlikely, unfortunately. I think more we're gonna find a way for me to record, even if it ends up that I have to record somewhere here. Or I can work out with some friends that I have that I can go maybe record in a way that's safe, Of course, I would much rather go to Tennessee. Like the plan wasn't be in the studio with the guys and do it that way, because, I mean, it's going to be a really cool experience to be in the studio with Megadeth, And
it's your first time too, right?
First time, maybe the last time, who knows? I mean, the band has been around for many years, and I don't know what will happen in 3 or 4 years from now. So, Dave has obviously been very fortunate that he's gotten better now with his, health issues, but still, there's a lot of fragility involved as well. So, but hopefully we can just, keep working in some capacity. And then we have a lot of tours that are planned for this year, which are still officially happening. But I personally am a bit worried that they're not going to happen. So we just, again, man, the only way forward is to just play it by ear and play it day by day and hope for the best.
I think we should appreciate that we have the internet. So
for sure. Imagine if that wasn't here right now.
We will be screwed, basically.
For sure, man. Yeah.
But you mentioned the Satyricon gig. Anders told me this because I wasn't aware that you actually stepped in for Frost. But was this back at that cruise thing, the 70,000 tons, or which was it?
Yeah, that was the one. Yeah. In early 2014. And the way it happened was that I was already on the cruise with Soilwork, because we were playing that edition, and I'd received a call from Satyr about possibly helping them out some weeks prior, but they had somebody else who was, gonna do the gig normally, and they just weren't 100% sure that it was gonna work out. So he called me just in case. I guess Victor Brandt from Entombed, and who had worked with Satyricon in the past, had recommended me. So and then a few days before the cruise, all of a sudden I get a call from Satyr, and he's like, well, unfortunately at this very last minute, things are not working out with the person that was going to help us on drums. Would you still be able to do it? So, of course, me being me, I'm like, hell yeah. I mean, I've been a huge Satyricon fan, since the early albums, and always followed their career and thought they were one of the most outstanding bands in the black metal genre. Like, I'm sure you agree, they're completely unique and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just genius music, So for me, and I've also been, on top of that, a huge fan of Frost's drumming. He's absolutely a stellar drummer who has his own way of doing things.
That's the thing I was coming to. He has his personal style and touch, and I have said this time upon time when listening to stuff that Frost has done on not just Satyricon but other bands, that you can kind of pinpoint and say that that's him.
Yeah. Exactly. He's recognizable among 1,000, and he, as much as, he might feel a certain way about his drumming, but I think, again, it's one of those examples where the fact that he just plays in his own way makes him so great, you know. And it's amazing because you can see him progress over the course of the years with the Satyricon albums. You can see him getting better and better at what he does and just pushing the limits in ways that are, you know, quite scary. I'm very fortunate that they didn't want to play like the Scorn Torrent or something like that on the cruise, or I would have died, you know.
So you basically play the hits then, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, we played mostly the hits, but at the time the self-titled album had just come out. So we played quite a few songs off of that, songs like The Infinity of Time and Space, which is an 8-minute piece that has a lot of, you know, ups and downs and a lot of very interesting song structure. I think I spent like, out of my 2 days that I had to learn the set, I think I spent like half the first day just learning that song and then looking at my watch being like, I still have 15 songs to go and I already spent like 6 hours on this one, you know.
Sometimes traditional songwriting is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And fortunately for me, I was familiar with their older work. So songs like, you know, Fuel for Hatred or Repine Bastard Nation were not that surprising to me. I had those down pretty fast, but I also studied stuff like To the Mountains, which is a very long track. And then some of the more newer songs that were just more adventurous songwriting. So it was a really intense task. And I can tell you on the boat, once we were on the cruise, you know, we did a short rehearsal together the day before in Miami, and the guys were very jet lagged and were so kind to, you know, even despite that, to rehearse with me. But I can tell you that on the cruise, besides being on stage with Soilwork and being on stage with Satyricon, I spent every waking minute studying those songs, sitting in my room, you know, with the headphones on and dry practicing with the guys in their cabins and stuff. And we even did a rehearsal on the day when, you know, those cruises always stop somewhere like in Mexico or whatever, Bahamas. So the day the cruise did that and everybody went to the beach, we were rehearsing, you know, like that's what was happening.
But you just have to do it that way.
There was no other way. I mean, I had so much information to cram in my head in such a short amount of time, and it's daunting, you know. And to tell you the truth, which I've not done very often, I've only done this a few times, but I played with charts on stage. I had my charts next to me because it was a situation where not only was there a lot of things to remember, and then on top of that, there were also live arrangements, which... Initially, when I studied the songs, I didn't know about those. I didn't have time to go look at YouTube videos.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
exactly. So I go rehearse with the guys, and Satyr starts telling me, "Oh yeah, so this song we put this in the beginning. Oh, and then this song we played this riff like this many times, and then there's this part in the end." And I'm like, "Oh my god, you know, this is like I'm gonna explode, you know." But that's the job when you do session gigs. That's what you do, and I took it all like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. And the shows actually went really well. You know, it was a lot of fun and a massive. Thank you. Yeah, 2 shows. Yeah. It was a massive time for me. You know, it's something that I remember really fondly because it was a huge honor for me to be a part of a show of such a legendary band that I've always respected so much, and to fill in for who I consider is one of the best drummers in extreme metal, which is Frost. You know, I mean, it's something that I'll always be proud of.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Truly a special drummer, for sure. So,
yeah.
Well done, sir.
Thank you.
I need to go on YouTube and check that out if you kept it together or not.
I don't know if there's a few videos. I actually have some videos, but I never posted them because I didn't know if they would want me to do that. So I just kept them to myself. Yeah.
You should check with Anders.
Maybe, yeah.
But you have obviously been kind of leaning more to death metal then from the beginning. Have you ever been into black metal at all?
Oh, yeah. So for me, in the beginning, it was very much, you know, the late 80s scene when, you know, the whole Earache explosion happened and Roadrunner and all those bands. That was fully what I was into. You know, I could name a million bands. But when I moved to Nancy, which was in 93, that's when I started. I was friends with this kid who had a fanzine, if you can remember those things.
Of course.
Yeah, but you know, of course. Hopefully people seeing this or listening to this will remember too, but it's basically a hand-printed magazine that you just put together yourself.
Xerox machine.
Yeah.
Click.
Exactly, yeah. And so this kid was doing that, and he asked me to write some reviews for him. He was this very kind of weird punk kid that had was very antisocial underground kind of guy, but very cool. And he would give me tapes, and I remember, one of the really big shockers for me was when he gave me a tape that had both Under a Funeral Moon and Transylvanian Hunger on it. And
that's the pinnacle right there.
Exactly. That was like, what is this thing? What is this sound? And I was completely mesmerized by that for some months, where I was just like, oh my God. I mean, of course I knew Bathory because they had been around and I'd always been a Bathory fan. Ironically, the first Bathory album I bought was Hammerheart, which is kind of different from the early work that's more pure black metal.
The Viking stuff, yeah.
Yeah, which is great too. I still love Hammerheart to death, But anyway, so the Dark Throne stuff was really my introduction to the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s black metal scene, specifically from Norway. And so from there, of course, I delved into all the other bands, Satyricon, Emperor was really big for me. Those bands were, and then they started touring too. So I saw Emperor a few times in the early 90s. Cradle of Filth, like all those with Mick Barker at the time on drums in the early work, all that stuff was really, really important to me, and I was completely into it. Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. I can see we have been speaking for an hour and 10 minutes now.
Not too bad.
I guess that's good. That's good. We kept it up.
Yeah.
So I guess you got other things to do today. It's what is it over there now? 1 or 2 in the afternoon?
Yeah, 1:30 in the afternoon right now. We have a nice little sunny weather the past 2 days. Quite windy, but quite nice. And
it's California, man.
Yeah, it's California. Believe it or not, we actually had a lot of rain when the lockdown first happened. We had a few weeks here where it was raining a lot, which is really nice because we need it here. The periods of rain are kind of limited here most of the time, and some years it just hardly rains, and then you get these massive drought problems where everything, like all the plants die, and it just gets too hot, especially where I am in the valley, which is a little bit north of the downtown LA, over the mountains. So
we went up there actually. I think we went to North Hollywood to be part of a movie set or something, the final night.
Right, yeah.
Do you live nearby there? Is it around there?
I'm exactly in North Hollywood, actually. That's where I live, so...
Okay.
So,
cool.
And we don't, it's usually about 3 or 4 degrees Celsius warmer here than it is on the other side of the mountains, closer to the ocean, because the mountains kind of block the ocean air to come in, so the valley gets hotter. And in the summer, in the spring and summer, it can get really, really hot here. So it's nice to have had some precipitation to keep the plants alive. And my wife has been planting like potatoes and tomatoes and lettuce and stuff since we had some extra time now because of the lockdown, and we've always talked about planting some veggies. So inspired by Anders Odden from Cadaver's beautiful garden, we went ahead and tried to do the same.
That's good you said that, because I almost forgot. We need to have a couple of minutes on Cadaver,
we do.
which has a new EP out.
Yes.
Digital EP.
Yes, digital EP. It's called DJAF, and we recorded it last year along with the new album, which initially was supposed to come out first. So the plan was to have the album out around now, and then we were saving the EP for later as a special treat, to people. But then, because the virus and the lockdown disrupted record production plans and release schedules and stuff, we discussed with Nuclear Blast. Maybe we could just switch things around and release these 3 songs first as kind of a teaser for the album, and just do it digitally, since unfortunately we can't print vinyl right this very moment. So we decided to go with that, and we released it last week. And it's had excellent reactions, man. I've been super stoked to read the comments, and I've had a lot of people reach out to me, friends and stuff, that really seem to like the music. And so that's cool, because we really put our heart and soul into it. As I was saying earlier, we approached it the way Cadaver has always approached music over the years, which is with passion and without regard for convention or, I will say, modern recording techniques. We just wanted to have a blast and play old school death metal the way we like it, and that's exactly what we did.
Awesome. And Anders is a close friend of mine, and it's funny I remember this is a way back actually, where he actually showed me the album, or several tracks of the album, and it was his first time being kind of a lead singer in a death metal setting.
Yeah,
even though it has been his band from the start, I think, but he's never been the singer, so that's a big step for him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was funny because we discussed all this stuff, prior to really preparing the album together, and we had considered asking some people, and then at some point Anders said, why don't we just do a duo, and I will just handle everything outside of drums, and then for the live situation we'll just work with what we can, because obviously for me in a normal time I will be on the road with Megadeth most of the time, and I will not really be able to tour that much with other bands. But he's always been super cool with that. He's always said, look, that's cool. I have other people that I can ask to play in the band when we have tours that you can do or shows that you can do. But you and I can still be the core of the band. So he's been really kind to me, and really, we've really developed a nice bond, since I first met him it was during the Satyricon shows on the 70,000 Tons of Metal that we met, and that this whole idea to restart Cadaver happened. So everything comes full circle because we talked about that. And that's where this comes from.
It was kind of funny actually, because the Tons of Rock festival here in my hometown in Halden, I remember talking to Anders one of the days, and then the next day I talked to Anders again, and he was like, I just went to pick up the Megadeth drummer, and we drove out to my studio and had a barbecue. That was like, yeah, okay. Sure, you did.
I remember that very well. That was great because he wanted to come pick me up and show me the studio and maybe jam on some stuff, and that's when we actually did an early version of a song called Feed the Pigs, which is gonna be on the album, which has
awesome
Cam Lee from Massacre and the old Death singer. He's doing guest vocals on that song, so it's really cool. And that's the thing. It's always just being with Anders. It's just been a very natural friendship because we come from the same place in the scene, and even though he's a little bit older than me and was doing music before me, we have a lot to talk about when we're together, and a lot of kind of similar interests. So it's always been natural, and he's always been super cool and fun to hang around with, and just a really positive spirit, and that's the kind of thing that's beautiful about what we do, right? I mean, you know that too from working with people in Mork. It's like when you can get a nice vibe going and people that are all into it for the right reasons, it's the best thing ever.
Yeah, it is. It's, as we say in Norwegian, it's balsam for sjela, which means it's conditioner for the soul,
Nice. That's a great expression. I love that.
And Anders told me, I remember he went over to your studio and stayed at your house and stuff, and told me about it when he came back, that you guys recorded the album as a two-piece in a local studio there, and just hung out at metal concerts and stuff, and he recorded like guest vocals on his phone in the alleys and stuff,
Exactly.
Quite a funny story.
Yeah, it was cool. We got to hang out both with Possessed and Carcass, which both bands are like two huge influences for both of us, and they both happened to be around at the time when Anders was here those 2 weeks in Los Angeles, so it was perfect timing. And yeah, we got Jeff Walker to do the guest vocals on the cell phone, and as well as Jeff Becerra from Possessed, and so which we lovingly call them the Jeffs. So
yeah,
so it all ended up working out really great and just being an absolute blast, and so I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I've always enjoyed doing with music, because music tends to get, when you're in a professional setting, there tends to be a lot of outside things, just like with any job that come in, where you have to, deal with, obviously touring is a big hassle in many ways, but then you have to deal with emailing and contracts and all this stuff and these long processes. So it's really refreshing to be able to do something that just kind of pours out of you in a very short amount of time. You don't overthink it. You let the spontaneity speak and do its magic, and it is what it is afterwards. Some people will love it, some people will hate it, as with everything, but that's not why we do it. We just do it because that's who we are, that's what we feel, and that's authentic. And I think in the end, authentic things are are what matters. You know, it's like you can only be true to yourself, no matter how many obstacles get in the way. You're just true to yourself, and you do the best you can. And that's in general, you know, over the past years, you know, I have a lot to learn. I'm a very flawed human being like most of us, but I would say that being myself and giving the best I can every day, that's my motto in life, you know, not just in music, not just in bands, it's just every day, you know. And some days it's really hard, you know, and I struggle with it just like we all do, but I believe that that's the way to go. I learned that from my mom. You know, she got sick a few years ago and passed away, and through the process of her passing and the way I dealt with that, and the way I have to credit my wife Hannah, who was extremely considerate and helpful through that process, you know, and really helped me spend the last years with my mom in a way that I'm very grateful I got to do, which I might not have done without my wife's input. And it really changed my vision on life. And I am extremely grateful to be alive and in good health, and, you know, to have many cool people in my life, people such as yourself and Anders, and all the people that I get to talk with music about and hang out with. And those are things that I remind myself of on a regular basis, and that make difficult days easier for me. And I think, you know, it's interesting to see how these experiences in life can really help you enjoy life more in the end.
How old are you now? 40, 44 or something?
45.
45.
Yeah.
I would say you figured this out quite. You're still a young man, so you are able to have this positive angle on life for many years to come, and that's a gift, I guess. And
yes.
It's inspiring for me as well to meet people like you.
Thank you.
Because we are all, like you said, we are all flawed somehow, you know, and I have been through a lot of shit as well, and I have been kind of negative in my mind for, I don't know, for the duration of my life up till now, I guess. But I'm more and more start to realize that it's not worth it, you know. You just have to try to be positive, you know, because life it's kind of hippie way of saying it, but life is a gift, you know. And
it is.
And I'm thankful for each day I can, you know, get up in the morning and be healthy and have the people I love me around me, you know. So
no, absolutely. And I know all that stuff sounds, you know, it can sound very peace and love and kind of silly, but the truth is, first of all, you know, what I want to say is, I've been negative for most of my life too. Not saying that I was always walking around being this negative guy, but I've had a lot of darkness in me. And the funny thing is, you know, the darkness can become a comfort zone where you go because you know it. And even though it's kind of depressing and negative, it also feels like home, you know. So I had to really work hard to force myself out of that. Not because... You're
tricking your mind.
Basically. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't judge anybody who goes through that. And even, you know, for some people, they can never really get out of it. And I don't judge any of those people. But for me, I started realizing that, like you said, every day is something that we should enjoy, because there comes a day when we're not around, or for some of us that are unfortunate, there could come a day where we can't do everything we want to do. Like for me, a very poignant moment was when one day I was visiting my parents, and my mom was already sick at this time, and she was at home because luckily she was able to spend, you know, the last few years of her life at home and not in a hospital or something like that. But she was very well taken care of. But there was a day where she couldn't put a hairband in her hair anymore. And she cried because she was, you know, she was generally throughout her period of when she was sick, she was a very optimistic and positive person. But there were moments like that were extremely difficult for her. And I happened to witness that moment where she was just really upset because she couldn't do the simplest little thing that she had done her whole life. And that, especially for a woman, you can imagine is like, you know, looking okay and being okay with how you look is like,
it's,
you know,
dignity and everything,
yes.
You know.
Yeah, so that was the thing where you realize, like, man, there comes a time when a lot of things you take for granted just aren't going to be around, you know, they're not going to happen. It's not going to be that way. So while we're here and we're able to, like, do everything we can every day, do everything we want every day, even in this time when we're locked up in our homes, there's still a lot of cool stuff we can do, a lot of good time we can spend with the people we love, with our animals, etc. It's like, you know, you have to You have to be aware of that, because if you're not, you're really going to miss out on life, you know. And like you said, it's never too late to realize that. Even if you realize that later in life, you know, I don't have any regrets. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes. We all do. And here's the thing. Shit happens to all of us. It's how we're going to deal with it. You know, like we're all going to have... Of
course.
We're all going to have crap happen to us. So there's nothing we can do about that. But we have the choice about how we deal with it.
Oh, this is so beautiful. Wise words, my friend.
Thank you. Hippie class with Dirk.
Yeah. We have a hippie time now. It's okay, you know. And just like your brother David Ellefson put it in one of his books, if you live in the past or in the future, you miss out on life, which is going down right now. So
true. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you very much, man. And could you please just some final words for the listener?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you, Thomas, for having me. This has been a really fun chat, and I really appreciate you inviting me to talk with you and to spend some social distance, but still social time. Yeah, man. And other than that, I just want to say to everybody, check out the new Cadaver EP. Check out my Ben C stuff. You can go to benc.bandcamp.com if you want to hear my grindcore project. I have a lot of new music coming from that as well. If any of you listening are interested in drum lessons, you can reach out to me via my website or on Instagram. I'm always up to opening up some slots in my schedule. And of course, other than that, just stay safe, stay healthy, do what's right, stay inside if you can, and be smart. I think that's the best advice right now.
Perfect. And you believe this will last for a long time, but I live kind of in the belief that it will end soon, hopefully. So don't try to change my... thank you. So as soon as possible, I will jump on the plane. I will come back to beautiful California, because I really enjoyed it when we were there last time. And I'm going to seek you out, and we need to hang out and just enjoy life together, man.
Yes, next time I will be there for sure, man. If I'm not on the plane somewhere, flying somewhere, I will be there for sure.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dirk.
Thank you, my friend. We will talk soon, and take care out there. Stay safe.
Cool.
Cheers.